My mom always said life was like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get.
The narrative structure of Forrest Gump is actually very well balanced. The movie is divided into 3 parts: family, love, and friendship. These 3 emotions not only grow individually but also come together in a perfect loop. It's like the famous feather that falls at the beginning and takes off at the end. The film starts at a bus stop where Forrest is about to go find his long-lost love, Jenny. If you take a close look at the items in his suitcase, you'll notice that it pretty much contains his entire life up to that point. There's the ping-pong paddle he used in China, the hat he wore when running across America, the magazine that featured him after becoming a shrimping mogul, and the book his mother read to him when he was a kid. Oddly enough, despite all the medals Forrest has won, his suitcase only holds these old items. The director did this to show from the very beginning that Forrest doesn't care about honors or winning and losing. He just follows his heart. It's like when he talks about meeting US presidents multiple times but rolls his eyes. In many significant historical moments, Forrest's simple-minded actions ironically reveal the hypocrisy of those in power, like when he told President Kennedy that he needed to pee, only to find a photo of Marilyn Monroe in the bathroom, or when President Johnson had just announced an increase in troops to Vietnam, and moments later, during the War Hero ceremony, Forrest's indifferent buttock was shown to the president.
I understand you were wounded. Where were you hit?
In the buttocks, sir.
Oh, that must be a sight. I'd kind of like to see that.
He's like the child in the Emperor's New Clothes. Because he's unaware, he's powerful. Tom Hanks uses a slow speech pattern and exaggerated expressions to create the impression that Forrest isn't very bright. But for young Forrest, his slow mind and leg braces make him a target for bullying. There's an interesting contrast in the movie. Forrest has to wear heavy, stiff leg braces to learn to walk upright again, but they're so inconvenient that he gets stuck in a drain. Meanwhile, there are several perfectly able-bodied men sitting on the side, but they don't move an inch to help. In fact, even after Forrest and his mother walks far away, they're still just sitting there, watching.
Don't ever let anybody tell you they're better than you, Forrest. If God intended everybody to be the same, He'd have given us all braces on our legs.
This highlights his mother's deep love for Forrest. She never saw his disabilities as flaws. On the contrary, the real flaw lies in those who have healthy bodies but are morally indifferent. Throughout the movie, the ones who act despicably are often those who appear normal on the outside, like those indifferent bystanders, the boys who bully Forrest, or even the school principal.
Your mama sure does care about your schooling, son.
After the principal coerces Forrest's mother into sleeping with him in exchange for Forrest's admission to school, the camera shows a drawing of the American flag that young Forrest made. In a country that prides itself on equality, both African Americans and less privileged white people are still left out. Forrest's mom had to use her body just to get him the same educational opportunities as other kids. What an ironic commentary. Forrest's mother doesn't appear much in the film. From the moment she helps Forrest put on his leg braces to the time she sends him off on the school bus, only about 8 minutes in total. Her scenes are bookended by actions that are all about giving Forrest a chance at a normal life. She helps him learn to walk and ensures he can go to school, paving the way for him to step out into the world.
I happen to believe you make your own destiny.
How to make his own destiny. Just like how Forrest's mother always wears clothes with floral patterns whenever she appears. In this small town, she refuses to be just another blade of grass. She wants to be a flower that blooms stubbornly. While others see Forrest as mentally slow and physically handicapped, his mother constantly reassures him.
Remember what I told you, Forrest. You're no different than anybody else is. You're the same as everybody else. You are no different.
So, after she passes away,
I bought her a new hat with little flowers on it.
Maybe Forrest knew deep down that he was the fruit of his mother's blossoming flower, the best proof that he had created his own destiny. Going back to the bus stop at the beginning of the movie, right before Forrest says the famous line, "Life is like a box of chocolates," he does something significant.
Do you want a chocolate?
He shares his favorite chocolate with a stranger. Sharing is a powerful gesture. In the entire movie, only 3 people share their most precious things with Forrest: his mother, Jenny, and Bubba. These 3 people represent his family, love, and friendship. On the school bus, every kid refuses to let Forrest sit next to them, except for Jenny, who offers him a seat. Unlike Forrest's caring mother, Jenny's father is an abusive alcoholic who molests her. Jenny's greatest wish is to become a bird and fly far away from her troubled life. She leaves Forrest 3 times throughout the movie.
Wish you wouldn't go, Jenny.
Where are you running off to?
Her difficult childhood marks the beginning of her unhappiness, but Forrest, who is honest and kind, is the opposite of her father. So why does she keep running away from him?
You have a dream, Forrest? About who you're gonna be?
Who I'm going to be? Aren't I going to be me?
This question reveals the essence of why Jenny keeps leaving. Forrest just wants to be himself, but Jenny longs to become someone else. Unlike her roommate, who decorates her space with dolls, fluffy slippers, and pink bed linens, Jenny's bedside features a guitar and walls covered with posters of musicians. In a way, Jenny does become a singer. One detail sets her apart from the other performers. While the others happily collect tips, Jenny angrily kicks the money away from her feet.
Hey, stupid jerk! I'm singing a song here!
She's not upset because someone threw water on her, but her singing was interrupted. After Forrest picks her up, she furiously throws the guitar at him and storms off the stage. This seemingly ungrateful anger hides Jenny's deep sense of pride and confusion.
You can't keep trying to rescue me all the time.
She isn't a princess waiting to be rescued by a prince. Jenny has always actively sought change, but she's unsure of what that change should be or who she wants to become. After the scene cuts to the outside, the only source of light in the darkness is the neon sign of the club, with the word love glaringly prominent.
I love you.
Forrest, you don't know what love is.
Jenny tells him he doesn't understand what love is, but she's the one being objectified by men in a place that literally spells out love. There's another piece of evidence that directly reflects her confusion: her shoes.
Mom always said there's an awful lot you can tell about a person by their shoes.
Just as dress shoes have a formal quality and sneakers symbolize sportiness, changing shoes can alter one's outward appearance, but feet, as part of the body, represent the truest self. In Forrest Gump, only Jenny is ever shown barefoot. As an adult, when she returns to her childhood town and faces the dilapidated house filled with painful memories, at this moment, she's barefoot. Similarly, when she marries Forrest, dressed in white and wearing a flower crown, her face glows with happiness, and she's barefoot again. I believe this design choice highlights that Jenny, who spends her life trying to become someone else, is only truly herself when she's barefoot. On the other hand, when she's singing in the club, Jenny is fully exposed, yet she wears pink shoes. This contrast symbolizes her inner confusion. She's constantly changing, trying to become someone else, but she's not yet herself. So, while Jenny is lost in her search for identity, what is Forrest doing? As we mentioned earlier, the film is neatly divided into 3 sections: family, love, and friendship. When Forrest joins the army, he meets his lifelong best friend, Bubba. Forrest's school days and military life both begin on a bus. In both instances, Forrest is awkward and isolated, rejected by others, but just like before, he meets kind-hearted people willing to share and offer friendship.
You can sit here if you want.
Sit down if you want to.
In many ways, Forrest and Bubba were destined to become best friends. The movie often uses symmetrical shots to highlight their similarities. Despite being strangers, Bubba offers Forrest his handkerchief to wipe the rain off his face and goes on and on about shrimp because it's the thing that matters most to him. Likewise, at the beginning of the movie, Forrest is willing to share his chocolate with a stranger and talks endlessly about his mom and Jenny, because those are what matter most to him. This is why, when they reach the Vietnam battlefield, Lieutenant Dan asks,
Where you boys from in the world?
Alabama, sir.
You twins?
No, we are not relations, sir.
In the military, 2 key characters stand out: Bubba and Lieutenant Dan. What's fascinating is how their fates are both complementary and ironic. Bubba's family has been shrimpers for generations, and his greatest dream is to own a shrimp boat, just like his ancestors. On the other hand, Lieutenant Dan comes from a long line of military men, and his greatest wish is to die heroically in battle, just like his forefathers. In this war, Bubba wants to live.
I want to go home.
Lieutenant Dan wants to die.
I was supposed to die in the field with honor.
But in the end, Bubba dies by the river, while Lieutenant Dan survives. The script is designed this way to highlight the unpredictability of fate. Lieutenant Dan always says that the most important thing in Vietnam is to keep your feet dry.
Mekong will eat a grunt's feet right off his legs.
Yet, he loses his legs not to the river, but to war itself. Why do I say that Forrest Gump not only has a perfectly balanced narrative structure, but also shows growth in family, love, and friendship, forming a complete loop? When Lieutenant Dan loses his legs, he asks Forrest,
Do you know what it's like not to be able to use your legs?
echoing Forrest's own fate as a child.
Yes, sir, I do.
But the key difference is that Forrest had his mother, who put him in leg braces, and Jenny, who yelled for him to run. Eventually, Forrest finds the strength to move his legs and overcome his destiny. But Lieutenant Dan lives on government support after losing his legs. In other words, Forrest takes control of his own life, while Lieutenant Dan's survival is entirely dependent on the mercy of the US government. To emphasize his sense of powerlessness, the movie includes a scene where he loses control of his wheelchair, sliding off the path. This represents how Dan, at that point, has no control over his own destiny. It's Forrest who catches the wheelchair and pulls him back to safety, becoming a stand-in for both Dan's mother and Jenny. This help goes beyond just the physical realm. Forrest, honoring Bubba's dream, buys a shrimp boat and immediately writes to Lieutenant Dan, inviting him to be his first mate. The process of shrimping becomes Lieutenant Dan's journey of self-healing, while Forrest humbly claims that their success was purely because the hurricane wiped out all the other boats, leaving only theirs intact. The truth is, they survived because on the night of the storm, they stayed at sea, braving the winds instead of returning to the harbor.
Now me, I was scared. But Lieutenant Dan, he was mad.
Earlier, Lieutenant Dan mentions God twice. Once after losing his legs, when the pastor tells him he'll go to heaven after death, and again when they're struggling to catch shrimp, the pastor says that only faith will bring rewards. Dan's response both times is to drink, and drink heavily. When Lieutenant Dan stands tall on the mast, shouting into the storm, "Bring it on," his body and the mast form a cross-like shape, symbolizing a moment of transformation. It's his fearless defiance in the face of the storm that saves the shrimp boat from destruction, ultimately leading to their business success. God helps those who help themselves. There's an interesting contrast in the film. Before Dan conquers his inner demons, all they pull up from the ocean are old military boots and helmets. But after Dan faces the storm and regains his self-confidence, he leaves behind the chair marked with US and replaces his lost legs with titanium prosthetics, allowing him to stand tall once more. This symbolizes his journey. Only by fighting against fate and the trauma of war can he free himself from its shadow and take back control of his life. The film frequently touches on the theme of destiny.
If we each have a destiny, or if we're all just floating around accidental like on a breeze.
When the feather falls at the beginning, Forrest is about to find Jenny. By the time the feather takes flight at the end, Jenny has passed away, and Forrest has taken on the role of his mother, sending his son to school at the same bus stop and reading him the same book, Curious George. This book, which appears 3 times in the movie, tells the story of a little monkey from Africa, who upon arriving in the city, faces challenges and discomfort. But through curiosity, kindness, and bravery, George accomplishes feats that even humans struggle to achieve. I think, maybe George is Forrest. Neither of them is particularly smart or well-suited to the cutthroat society around them, as if fate has already stamped them with a disqualified label from the start. But perhaps this is the core message of Forrest Gump. While you never know what flavor life's box of chocolates will give you next, you shouldn't just gobble it down like Lieutenant Dan. Nor should you, like Jenny, try to turn the chocolate into an apple or an orange. We should savor each piece of life, just like Forrest does, appreciating the sweetness or bitterness of every moment. We can only cherish it. We can't ask for more. Just like the school bus that takes Forrest Jr. to school, the bus hasn't changed, the driver hasn't changed, and even little Forrest is wearing the same blue plaid shirt his father wore on his first day of school. The only thing that's changed is who's dropping the child off. Now it's Forrest. In that moment of farewell, Forrest wants to pass on the same long list of advice his mother once gave him.
Hey, Forrest, don't.
But all that comes out is,
I want to tell you I love you.
This is the essence of fate, the changing and the unchanging. What changes are the people, the circumstances, and the way we express ourselves. What doesn't change is love, and that's why Forrest Gump remains such an iconic film. The most powerful thing that touches our hearts is often the simplest and purest love. As long as love remains, hope will never die.
I'm not a smart man,
But I know what love is.